everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Letty and this is Bugs Books, where we talk about all things fiction, especially Christian fiction. So today we have my February 2025 reading wrap up, and I read 6 books in February, although if you follow me on Goodreads or Fables, there's only going to be 5 mentioned, but I'll get to that in a minute. Let's just go ahead and jump right in with it. So the first book that I finished in February is a nonfiction, which was Called to Create by Jordan Raynor. And this book is all about how Christian entrepreneurs and creators, such as writers and just anybody in the creative business or who are entrepreneurs and starting a business, how we do that from a Christian standpoint and how we honor God with our creativity and with our business. Pretty much anybody who's in business for themselves, whether they are doing it as an entrepreneur starting a company, or whether they're a writer or a graphic designer, or anybody just doing freelance work or contract work, this book is aimed for them. But I mean, it's also good for just anybody who works at all, because it just talks about working for the Lord and doing what you do for the Lord. So it's good like that. I gave it 4 stars because I agreed with pretty much everything it said. However, I found it really boring. I struggled to get through this book, and I am a creative myself. I'm a writer and an editor, and so I was the target audience for this book, but I don't know, I had a lot of trouble forcing myself to read it. I just found it kind of boring, but I agreed with it, and I think that it's everything in it is true about how we should work and how we should commit to the Lord. And so I had to give it 4 stars just because I agreed with it. But I have to admit, I struggled to get through it. But that's just me. I'm definitely more fiction-minded than nonfiction, although I'm trying to expand my nonfiction reading, which is why I try to read at least 6 nonfiction books a year. But this one I really struggled with. So next was actually the next book that I read in February was actually my very first follower pick. And so if you've been here a couple months, you know that in 2025, one of my reading goals is to read 6 books that my community, whether on Instagram or YouTube, picks. And so I made a poll of 4 choices and had you guys on YouTube and on Instagram vote. And the winner was These Tangled Threads by Sarah Loudin Thomas. And so I picked it up from the library and I got to reading it. I enjoyed the story. However, I only gave it 3.5 stars simply because it jumped around in time a lot. The novel takes place over about a 7-year period, but instead of just kind of going linear, year 1, year 2, year 3, which of course would have the dates in the 1900s, so 1907, 1908, 1909, and kind of progressing like that. It jumped around a lot, and honestly, I wouldn't even mind if it jumped around between 1907 and 1920. That's 13 years. I don't know what the exact years are. I don't remember. That was much earlier in the month. But if it jumped back and forth in the actual 7-year period, that would be fine too. But because it jumped around so much, just not only different years, but sometimes just months apart. It would be December 1907, and then January 1907, and then February 1909, and then March 1920, and then December 1908, and it was just and then from December 1908 to September 1908, and I was wait, we just jumped 7 years and now we're jumping back 3 months. It just really confused me personally, but I really enjoyed the characters. I really enjoyed the story. I thought there was a lot of growth that happened. I thought it was interesting, but I got confused, and I found myself constantly flipping between section heads to be okay, how much time have we jumped? Okay, we've gone back 3 months, but now we've gone forward 5 months, and now we've gone forward 3 years, and I'm like, wait, what is going on? I just found all the time jumping and the amounts of time we jumped backwards and forwards just to be a little confusing for me. So I only gave it 3.5 stars because I felt very confused when I was reading it. But but I like the story, and I would still recommend it. And I thank you guys for voting for it, because I do appreciate that I was able to read the story, because I enjoyed it. Okay, so the third book that I read in February is actually a beta read. One of my really good friends, Vivian Hale, who I went to college with and was in the creative writing club with in college, although I've actually known her since high school. We met at a leadership conference in high school, because we were both in the student associations of our high schools. And so we actually met at one of the conferences because my teacher, who was our student association sponsor, is her older sister. So when we went to this conference and she was our chaperone, she was like, Letty, actually, can you come meet my younger sister? You guys are in the same grade, and I really think you'll hit it off. Which was a little weird to have my teacher being like, Letty, you need to meet my sister. And I know that she thought it was weird too. She told me later, she was like, I was just so awkwarded out by the fact that my older sister was trying to get me to be friends with one of her students. But then we ended up going to college together and realizing that my teacher her sister was very correct. We had a lot in common. We were in the creative writing club together. We were similar majors, and we enjoyed a lot of the same stuff. So we became really good friends, and we were like, oh yeah, she was right. Like she said we would be friends, and we are. Anyway, long story short, she is writing her first novel now, and she's sent me. I was a part of the beta read group along with, I don't know how many beta readers she had, but a group of people that read her first draft in February. I won't tell you the name because it only has a working title right now, but I will tell you that it is a clean fantasy about elves and fae, and it is about a girl named Elise. She is a common elf, and there's these different realms of elven kingdoms and fae kingdoms, and they can only travel between realms when the portal is open, and the portal is open for diplomatic sessions a couple times a year. And so when this novel takes place, it's time for a diplomatic session, so the portals are open so that all of the rulers from the different kingdoms can come together and talk, and at the same time they do exchange programs between colleges in the different kingdoms. And so our main character, Elise, she has been accepted into an exchange program at a fae college, so she's going to be going through the portal during this time to go to a fae college. However, when she goes to the portal, there's a little bit of a case of mistaken identity, and somebody tries to kill her because they think she's somebody else. And so she gets wrapped up in this big political intrigue. And I will leave it at that, but if that interests you, you should check out Vivian Hale's Instagram, which I will link below in my description box, and look for her new book coming out. I think it's coming out this summer, but don't quote me on that, because she still has some things to do before she publishes it. She is going to be independently publishing it, but yeah. If that interests you, if elves and high fantasy and fae and clean fiction interest you, definitely check out her Instagram. And like I said, I can't tell you the name because it's a working title. I also won't be rating it in this video because I was just reading the first draft, specifically as a beta reader to give her feedback on it, so I can't really rate that. But yes, so, and obviously since I was beta reading for her, I can't mark that on any of my online reading trackers, and so at the end of the year, my Goodreads and my Fable, they're gonna be a book off, but that's okay because I'm still counting it as a book because I read a book. Anyway, so the next two books that I read were the first two books in Melanie Dickerson's The Regency Spies of London series. So the first book is A Spy's Devotion, and the second book is A Viscount's Proposal. So A Spy's Devotion is about a man named Nicholas Langdon who he gets injured. I already said The Regency Spies of London, so it takes place in Regency London. And at this time, England is at war with France. So Nicholas Langdon is a soldier, and he gets injured on the peninsula and comes home. But before he comes home, one of the dying soldiers that he's in the hospital with gives him a diary and asks him to take it to his friend in London. and it turns out this diary is that the man who was dying is a spy for the crown, and this diary is his coded messages to the Home Office, and so Nicholas is tasked with taking it to the Home Office. However, before he can, it is stolen from him, and so the Home Office enlist him into help spying and figuring out who stole the diary and what their plan is. And then the person that the Home Office assigns him to spy on is the uncle of our main girl, Julia, and so he kind of asks her to help him, be his eyes on the inside. So I gave this 3.5 stars. I liked Nicholas. Julia annoyed me a bit, to be totally honest. She was just a little annoying. Kind of rolled my eyes at her a lot. But I liked Nicholas a lot, and I liked the spying when it happened. Based on the back of the book and the fact that it is a part of a spy series, I expected there to be a lot more spying than there was. I felt like we would have a little bit of spying and then a whole lot of Regency balls and courtships and talking, and then a little bit of spying and then a whole lot of Regency balls and courtship and talking and all this stuff. And I love Regency novels. I love the balls, I love the courtships, I love the talking, but I went into this novel expecting it to be a spy novel, and so therefore I wanted more spying. But yes. And I had a particular problem with Julia and her opinion on something, but I can't remember what it is now, so I don't need to mention it to you guys. Then the second book in the series, A Viscount's Proposal. So I actually read a book in between these two, but since they're in a series, I'm going to talk about them together. So this one, technically, I finished at the beginning of March, but I only had like 50 pages left on the last day of February, which is why I'm including it in this video. But this takes place, the main girl is Nicholas's sister, Leora, and she gets into a scandalous situation with her like arch nemesis, the Viscount Withinghall, which obviously nothing happens, but like they're in a carriage together and it wrecks, and so they're found alone in this carriage at night. And so, in Regency London, they're like, oh, no, you must get married. And she's like, no, I can't marry this guy. I hate him. He hates me. We'd be miserable. And it kind of goes on from there. But I gave this one 4 stars because I really enjoyed both characters and I really enjoyed the story. However, again, like with the first novel at least had a little bit of spying. Despite being a spy series, this had like 0 spying in it. There is a little bit of mystery with the Viscount, but it's not really spy related. So I'm just gonna say, even though I gave it 4 stars, there's no spying in the spy novel. But I still really enjoyed both characters and the story, so I gave it 4 stars. I will say though that with both of these books, I got really mad at the female heroine because they both overhear like the villains of the book discussing like their evil plots, and neither of them say anything. Like, literally. And in this book, she overhears the villain say something, and again, it's like, how weird. And at this point, she's actually already been warned about the villain, like by her brother or something, and she's like, and I'm sorry if this is minor spoilers, I'm trying to keep it as little spoilers as possible, but like her brother like warns her about this villain, and then literally the next day she overhears this conversation that's very blatant about their evil plan, and she's like, that's weird, it couldn't have meant what it sounded like, it can't mean anything, so I'll just figure it out. And then she like never tells anybody. And they both do this, and I'm like, why are y'all not smarter than this? Like, if you hear something that sounds like a terrible plan from a villain, you should tell somebody. Like, and they both just kind of forget about it and move on. And it's like, what? So anyway, And then the sixth and final book that I read, which is Midnight on the Scottish Shores by Sarah Sundin. And I actually read it between the two Melanie Dickerson books, because after I read the first book, I was like, no, I've got to read my new release before I move on with the rest of the series. But so I read Sarah Sundin's newest book. It was just released in February, and it is about a double agent in World War II in Scotland. And I won't say anything more, but oh my goodness, it's so good. I gave it easily 5 stars. Like, it was so, so good. I could barely put it down. I loved Scylla, I don't know, and I loved Loudin, and I loved their whole story. I loved all the intrigue. I was so, like, emotional with this book. I was like, oh my goodness, Scylla needs some allies, and oh my goodness, y'all, can't you see what's happening? Like, I was literally, like, very emotionally invested in this book. I absolutely, absolutely adored it. And at the end of it, like, I know that it's a standalone, and in you know, Sarah Sundin's next book, she's going to move on to a completely different storyline and a completely different couple, but I was like, I need her to write a sequel to this book so that we can get more, like, spying adventures from Scylla and Loudin. Like, I just need a whole series about them alone and all their spying in World War II, because this is great. Like, I wish that she would write an entire series about these two people and their World War II espionage. I need more. So yes, that completes all of my books for February. I have been reading another nonfiction book pretty much all throughout February. For most of February, I've been reading it, but it's taken me a while to get through, so I'll talk about that in March. And yeah, that about wraps up our video for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I would love to hear what you read in February and what you loved about it. I think that my scores for February were a little low, except for, of course, the Sarah Sundin novel. But yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys read. I'm just going to warn you that my March video will probably have quite a few rereads in it, because for most of February, I have been in a major rereading mood, but I can't figure out what I'm, like, in the mood to reread. You know when you guys just have this, like, urge to read something really nostalgic, like something you've already read before, to have that nostalgia? Like, I've had the urge, but I don't know if I'm, like, wanting the nostalgia of, like, a Western, or, like, a Regency, or, like, a contemporary. So I feel like I'm gonna have to, like, reread 2 or 3 different books that I've read before, just to try to figure out, like, what I'm actually in the mood to reread. Like, how, like, I don't know what, like, itch I actually need to scratch. So I'm going to be probably rereading several books to try to get rid of that craving. Anyway, just a warning. But do let me know what you read, and if you read any of these books, and if you enjoyed them. If you disagree with me on their rating, let me know too, because that is the beauty of reading, is everybody's opinion is different. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you in the next video.